Oh, good morning, everyone. We're a few seconds away from starting, but I'll just start a bit. My name is Casper de Jonge. I'm a program manager on the Fabric Cat team. And today we're talking about a topic that is completely out of my comfort zone, and probably for most of you too. I'm a data guy. I did data warehouses, all of these things, but more and more with Fabric, with the whole SaaS world, these topics are very interesting and exciting too. And they're also a mindset shift from where we are from on-premise, when we are talking about traditional network security, to zero trust. And zero trust, that's what we're going to talk about today, is understanding zero trust. What is zero trust? Well, first of all, COVID changed a lot for many of us. For me personally, I haven't seen my office in 2.5 years. I always work from home or on the road or wherever. I am never actually in the office. Cyber attacks becoming more and more sophisticated. They will use every trick, all the things that you haven't thought about. They're going to try to get into your estate, get to all your data. Right? In my session yesterday, I was talking about more and more data is showing up, more and more data is getting available. Well, attackers also want to get to that data. And then a lot of different types of attacks, like phishing, is responsible for almost 70% of all the breaches. So security has never been more critical. So, but why are we talking about zero trust? And what is zero trust? The main goal of security is keep assets away from attackers. That's very simple and straightforward. But IT, the security is complex, right? You have many devices, you have many users, you have many connections. A trusted network security strategy is what we've been doing forever. And it started out when everyone had to go to the office and you put a firewall outside of the boundaries of your office. There was no cloud, all of these things. You put a firewall in, no one can get access. There were no laptops. That's it. Life was simple. Initial attacks were network-based, so they tried to go from the outside and they connect to your network and they try to get in, but you put firewall and firewall and firewall, and then you make sure that doesn't happen. They were seemingly simple and economical. And you accepted, and this is important, you accepted a lower security within the network, right? Once you're in, you're in. Maybe you have a username or something, but that's it. But once you're in, you're in. That's a very simple way of thinking about things. But world is getting more interesting because, hey, people are bringing their own devices to log into their estates, right? This is my phones, laptops, iPads, especially the CFO who wants to do his own thing. He wants to bring his own iPad. That's the way it goes. Bring your own device, mobile, SaaS applications. They're no longer in your corporate network. Okay, what do you do with that? So attackers, instead of breaching the perimeter, they shift to identity attacks. Phishing, credential theft. Security teams are overwhelmed with this completely different way of thinking about things. So this is why we're talking about zero trust, because the world has changed. It's no longer a nicely safe environment, relatively safe, of course, that of your own home network or corporate network with firewalls around it. So instead, and this is what the core tenet about zero trust is, instead of assuming everything behind the corporate firewall is safe, zero trust assumes an open network where trust must be explicitly validated at every time. Okay, so this is a different way of thinking. So we need to improve resilience, and this comes from the NSIT. This is a cybersecurity framework. If there's anyone who's doing any cybersecurity, this is the things that they've followed. But the main thing is we need to improve resilience. We need to enable these business missions while increasingly adding security assurances, which they have two words about it: left of bang and right of bang. We have to have plans for both of them. Prevent or lessen the impact of the attack. Okay, so you need to put up as much boundaries as possible, but you need to assume a breach has happened. We hope it, of course, never happens or nothing even happens, but we do assume it happens. And then we need effectively and rapidly manage those attacks. Identify, protect, detect, respond, or recover, and then govern around it. Again, this is the NSIT cybersecurity framework. That's whole day session when we want to talk about this. But it's important, improving the resilience. So what does it look like? Okay, the anti-pattern is we need to stop believing or believe that attackers will follow the planned path. Okay, so I have a hacker, I have a firewall, and I have in my data asset sitting at the end. It's the route that he can take. But attackers are smart. They choose the path of least cost / resistance. They said, well, okay, that looks like a mighty firewall. I'm not going to go there. Defenders need to focus on strong security, effective placement, rapid response to these attacks, and continuously testing and monitoring controls. So he's not going to go there. Because the attacker uses what he sees and what he can guess. So, okay, so that thing is a firewall, right? He has IDS, IPS, DLP, all these things. That's too much work for me. I'm going to do it differently. Because I bet their admins check email from the admin workstations. And I am betting that they would love to get a higher paying job. Okay? So I'm going to just send them an email. I'm sending an email to the admin. And the admin clicks on the email, and now I'm into his PC. Okay, so maybe I can already take over his PC and get to the whole network. Maybe not. Maybe he has access to some service account password in a spreadsheet. That happens. OneNote, whatever. We have some service accounts sitting in there. We take over the service accounts and we get to the data. This is not what the IT team came up with. Like, okay, no, we thought they were going to attack my firewall, but now they just took over my admin's PC and they're in. Game over. They got to our assets. So they are shaped by the experience and the fog of war. I think we've all, whoever has played video games in the past too, fog of war is an important thing. You don't know what's going on, and we use that confusion to go on a different path. We're going to surprise them. And so what can we do about it? Well, we need to raise the cost and the friction on attackers' easiest and high impact paths. So we're going to improve boundaries, right? Okay, we're going to start by data protection and monitoring. We're going to discover which business critical assets are there in the business. We increase security protections. We encrypt the data with Azure Information Protection, MIP labeling, all of these things. We're going to make sure that the data is getting secured. We're going to make sure that that attack that just happened cannot happen, okay? We're going to get rid of that password XLS. We're going to use a PAM, which is a moment in time access. So you cannot just get access to it all the time. You have to get an elevated permission, get data to it. We're going to use workload identities. If we want to connect to specific data, this is, for example, one of the things that, of course, we do at Microsoft too. For developers who want to deploy something to production, they cannot deploy to production from the main dev machine. They actually have to log into a SAW environment, which is a separate privileged access workspace. So you require separate accounts for admins and force multi-factor authentication passwordless, obviously. Privileged access workspace, so okay. So we want to make sure that those accounts, you have multi-factor authentication, you have all these double checks. Rigorously security hygiene. I was talking about this in my session too. This is my own phone. If I want to connect to my work from this phone, there are rules set up on my phone. I need to have the latest iOS update. If I don't have my iOS update, I'm getting emails saying you need to install the update. If you don't do it in 30 days, you will lose access to the corporate network. Okay? So we're mandating that if you want to use a device to connect to the corporate network, one of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure you're always up to date, because it prevents zero-day attacks. It prevents attacks on easy attacks on the machines. Of course, there's more things, right? Multi-factor authentication, all of these things. So we're building up boundary after boundary after boundary. Yeah, and in modern security, like XDR for identity, train a SecOps team, endpoints for identity flow compensations. So we're just going to make it more difficult, more difficult, more difficult for people to get in. We're raising the cost and the friction for those attackers. Now, as you can see, it's very complex and it's challenging. It's not an easy thing to do. We were just talking about it before. This is not something that you can do just sitting in your day-to-day data job. This is something you have to do together. Because there are so many things that are happening all the time. Brand new devices, IoT, DevOps, cloud services, aging products, enterprise IT service products, legacy, there's lots of legacy stuff around too, and nothing ever gets retired, so we have a data swamp that accumulates. Every point can be attacked, okay? So, and an attack can shut down business operations, creating board level risks. They have a lot of options, right? So they can use a device that hasn't been updated for 6 months and use that to get in. They can use phishing. They can use all these different ways of finding ways inside of your organization. So the attackers have a lot of options. Yeah, and then there's the regulatory sprawl, 200 updates from 750 regulatory bodies. We need you to do this, we need you to do this, we need you to use this, we need you to do this. And it just gets really complicated in a hurry. Threats, yeah, continuously changing threat landscape all the time. Dozens of hundreds of tools at customers, all these security tools. It can help, but it can also become a bother. Now, I think this is the main thing. Again, if there's one takeaway for you here today, this actually also goes to Power BI today, right? Power BI, and we'll talk about it in a second, how it applies to Fabric and how it applies to Power BI. This applies to your Office, this applies to your Dynamics, because Entra ID is zero trust. It's designed for zero trust. But it means that you have to go talk to your stakeholders. It means you have to go talk to your security team, who is not usually someone you probably talk to. You have to go talk to them. And actually, you can probably also find out that they actually have a lot of security. I was actually talking to the Entra team recently. One of my colleagues, they have a customer advisory team on the Entra side too. And he said, 95% of my job is to convince customers to use features that they already have. They paid for it. When you have an E3 or an E5 license, you have every security feature known to man. There is so much, but no one knows they exist because they don't think about these things. They think about firewalls and VPNs because that's what we've been doing for 25 years. But it's a rapid evolving world. So it's a team sport, so we need to make sure we talk to different stakeholders and drive business and technical requirements. Digital business and cloud empowers developers and bring your own devices. That's important. Securing many technologies. It cannot succeed as an isolated siloed team. This is where things get really tough, again. Like I was talking to some customers too. Yesterday I was talking about MIP labeling, and they said, yeah, we have MIP labeling in Office. I don't see it in Power BI. Yeah, just talk to your security team. They just have to turn on the checkbox, enable it for Power BI, and it's done. You can now start securing your Power BI environment and also Fabric with MIP labeling. So it impacts a lot of jobs, right? Impact is different for each role, like security posture management, security operations, technical officers, chief data officers. All these people have to be part of the conversation. They have to understand what is going on and what they need to go do. Now, let's bring it back to actual reality. So this is Entra, and this is not. This is zero trust. This is not only for Microsoft. There are other, like Okta and other identity providers that also do zero trust. Like if you go to Salesforce, which is also a SaaS service, they don't use Entra ID. You can, but you don't have to. Probably you can use Okta. It's also zero trust. Zero trust is a security standard across the industry. It's not just for Microsoft. But Microsoft also has it because we do it with Entra ID, right? These principles for zero trust in today's reality with Entra, we verify explicitly, we use the least privileged access, and we always assume breach. And what does that mean is, like, we can go pretty technical about some of these things, but at every stage, we check if it's the person who needs to be having access. At every step of the way, I was talking about it yesterday in my session on Fabric security. When you log into Fabric, you always have to go through Entra. All these steps that we were talking about before, okay, it needs to come from a corporate managed device. The device needs to be updated. The user has logged in with his device. It has two-factor authentication turned on. There are so many different things that are extra boundaries. Like if someone would steal my password, first of all, multi-factor authentication will kick in. Okay, if somehow they would also spam my or clone my phone, and multi-factor authentication will also be done by them, well, they're still not on a corporate managed device. Okay, so that would also will stop them. So we add all of these boundaries to people trying to log in. And this happens in every step of the way in Fabric. If you connect to a SQL Server endpoint, Entra kicks in. So you need to do multi-factor authentication. That's why we don't support SQL Auth, because SQL Auth is very not secure, right? I can just create a password Camille, and yeah, that's it, done. And I check it into my GitHub accidentally, and game over, you know? So there's lots of layers to add on top of it. So again, this is the same slide I was showing yesterday. So how does it relate to Fabric? Well, again, Fabric is a SaaS world. Every user, every person connects through Entra. There is all internal communication happens in the internal backbone. All the endpoints and access are protected using Entra ID. And then when your CFO brings his mobile phone, you know it's a secure phone. You know it's okay for him to look at the data because, yeah, again, corporate managed device, he is logging in with multi-factor authentication, all of these things. And then he can connect through Entra into Fabric. Now, what does that really look like in Microsoft? Again, the main feature that Entra ID uses, so there's two different things about Entra ID. Entra ID is used for authentication, which means username and password, multi-factor authentication, and then there are a lot of extra functionalities and features. For example, one of them is conditional access. And with conditional access, that is the main feature that allows you to build those layers of security from network location. So if you really want to, you can still say, hey, if you connect within my corporate environment, you can only log in when you're actually physically in the building. If you really want to, you can do that with Entra too. I'd probably say, well, I would not recommend it because that stops people from, hey, there's an emergency, they have to take care of their children or whatever it is, now they can log in and do their work. Like it's not very modern workforce. You can do it per application, you can check it by devices. So we use signals, decisions, and then finally we enforce it. Whatever happens based on those signals, we make a decision and then we enforce it. And there's a bunch of other things too. There's a lot of things that Entra gives you on top of these. Like for example, we were just talking about it, anomaly detection. Okay, so I log in, today I'm in the UK, I log into Fabric and that's my Entra here. It's the same Entra that's used for everything. I log into Fabric, he knows I'm in the UK, my PC is in the UK. But all of a sudden, if I were to log in from Russia, alarm bells would go off immediately and my account would get blocked. Because this is an anomaly. This is not okay. This cannot be right. So there's lots of things inside of Entra to build those. If you go back, think back to that beginning picture where we were keep building up roadblocks for the attacker to come into, like phishing too. Like I have Microsoft Defender on my phone. If I click on a malicious link, it actually blocks it. I can't do it. So again, layer upon layer upon layer. And yeah, that in short is what Zero Trust is. So really thinking about, instead of thinking about a corporate firewall, thinking about a network, think about the identity as the item to be secured. So that's it. If any questions, I will be here. I know it's a lot to take in, so go back to your security team, go have a discussion with them. That's the main takeaway here. And thank you for your time.